Springfield's Talk 1041. Good Tuesday morning. Almost said Monday. It is Tuesday. Welcome to the show, streaming live. KSGF.com, the KSGF app, where, of course, we also have podcasts available. Should you miss any of the show, want to share any of it, Spotify, iTunes, all of those places for you as well. Supreme Court win for the Trump administration and for the rule of law yesterday, with the Supreme Court finding 6-3 that immigration reform, or that the immigration enforcement, rather, ICE, specifically out in Los Angeles, was perfectly legal, constitutional, notching a win, that being President Trump at the court, with the top bench permitting the immigration enforcement agents to continue with the raids based on race and language. The court placed a hold on a lower court decision blocking ICE from proceeding with such raids. The case will continue up the legal chain, though ICE may continue its operations uninhibited in the meantime. The anti-ICE riots in L.A., led by the deployment of National Guard earlier this year, and federal law enforcement has maintained an active presence in the city. And there's just a number of different fronts, be it with immigration or just, crime itself, in which Democrats continue to find themselves willfully arguing on the side of those who break the law and downplaying crime when it is committed against, just average law-abiding citizens. The continuing coverage, which finally is getting some traction, the Ukrainian murder victim out in South Carolina, who is a refugee here to the United States, it just, again, is a demonstration that no particular person or category of person has any importance or significance to the media or to the Democrat Party unless it serves their purposes. Look at how these people continue to go on and on about refugees to this country, continue to go on and on about people who come to this country illegally. And so often they argue they have no other choice, that these people, if they get deported back to their countries of origin, that, that they're going to face dangers. And you couple that with the virtue signaling of Ukrainian flags everywhere by people on the left, because they've been told this is something you're supposed to support. It's almost as if this particular murder was created in order to demonstrate as starkly as possible the hypocrisy of the left. Here you have a refugee from Ukraine that came here for a safer life and was murdered, and the media has done everything they can to ignore it. And now that people via social media, average citizens, and what's considered to be conservative outlets have not let this rest, has made sure that the American people see yet another completely needless murder occurring in this country. They've been forced to cover it. And of course, their coverage is to downplay it, is to accuse conservative outlets of stoking up racism, of pouncing on this. CNN referencing, and we've got some audio of it, Trump pouncing on this issue in order to push his crime agenda. So you mean highlighting crime? This is how absurd they are. They are trying to portray it as somehow nefarious that Trump and Republicans are pointing to crime in order to demonstrate that we have a problem with crime in this country. This isn't pouncing for political purposes. It's what's called evidence. It is what is called proof. It's no different than, whenever some massive tornado goes through, and then that incident and maybe a high number of deaths and infrastructure issues is utilized in order to highlight the need for preparedness. Or whenever there is a house fire that is particularly tragic, if you got people who die in it, oftentimes that is then used in order to push the importance of fire detectors and fire plan. In case your home catches on fire, does everyone have a plan? It's not pouncing on it. It is recognizing that there is a problem that oftentimes could be avoidable whether it is surviving a tornado or a house fire. And here are ways that we can prevent something like this from potentially occurring in the future, or we need to have in place some new approach in order to make sure that some of these instances are avoidable. And it's the exact same thing when it comes to crime. But much like, in any sort of authoritarian regime, communist China being an example, they want, that being the left, to cover it up. You are not supposed to talk about it. If you recognize it and see it as a problem, you are racist. You are a conspiracy theorist, and you are to be ignored. You're to be marginalized. And as usual, the people who are the victims of the crimes are to go unrepresented, and there is, supposed to just continue with the absolute status quo, all for the sake of politics. And continuing this narrative, much like we had over the last couple of years with the economy during the Biden administration and with the border during the administration, and even crime itself, being told everything's fine. Don't believe right-wing media. Don't believe your friends. In fact, you should cut them off if they are feeding you with MAGA disinformation, and instead believe the elites, believe the experts that are presented to tell you you don't know what's really going on. And we continue to see that, and it's going to continue to play out. To what end, only time will tell. So we'll... we're going to get a news update here. There is video of what is said to be the flotilla that Greta Thunberg is on being hit by a drone strike. Clearly the Jews are at work here. But already just the video itself, and then the reaction to the video by at least one of the individuals on the ship has people that are reasonable, common sense people rolling their eyes going, okay, I don't think so. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see mostly sunny skies with a high near 84. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 61. For your Wednesday, mostly sunny with a high near 90. And taking a look at Thursday, sunny and hot with a high near 94.
The murder of Ukrainian refugee Irina Zarutska on the Charlotte Metro last month, sparking federal attention from FBI Director Kash Patel and Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, who say the case is under federal investigation and will have implications far beyond North Carolina. Patel says the FBI has been investigating the tragedy from day one and even hinted that new developments could be released soon, saying stay tuned, adding to a social media post on X suggesting that the federal probe could reveal more than what has been disclosed so far. Duffy also took to social media to announce that the agency is launching an investigation of its own into how the Charlotte transit system failed to protect the refugee. Though it'll be interesting to see what that finds. I'm not really sure. Yeah, in a situation like this, necessarily what it is that the transit system may have been able to do, though we may find this is why I suppose investigations are done. Duffy's announcement tied directly to a recent message from Trump's zero tolerance message regarding crime. Duffy said in a statement, if mayors can't keep their trains and buses safe, they don't deserve the taxpayers' money. U.S. DOT will be investigating Charlotte over its failure to protect Irina and will also be looking at other crime-ridden cities across the country. His message was accentuated by a statement from the White House signed by POTUS himself, saying he viewed the crime footage, demanded accountability, saying, I've seen the horrific video of a beautiful young Ukrainian refugee who came to America to escape the vicious war in Ukraine and was innocently riding the metro in Charlotte, North Carolina, where she was brutally ambushed by a mentally deranged lunatic. The perpetrator was a well-known career criminal who had been previously arrested and released on cashless bail in January a total of 14 times. Trump continued on, posting, what the hell was he doing riding the train and walking the streets? Criminals like this need locked up. Duffy went further, suggesting the federal transportation funding is at risk for cities that don't work to curb violence on public transit. Both Duffy and Patel seemingly frame the incident in Charlotte as a national test of accountability. The Trump administration weighing in on whether federal funds should be leveraging tools used to force local government to do the job and ensure the safety of the public. Now, meanwhile, you have finally the Democrat governor of North Carolina posting on X expressing that he is heartbroken for the family of Irina, who lost their loved one to the senseless act of violence, and I'm appalled by the footage of her murder. We need more cops on the beat to keep people safe. That's why my budget calls for more funding to hire more well-trained police officers. Now, in response to that, Representative Tim Moore and Tom Cotton, Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas, were among the many people who pointed out that Brown had been arrested and released roughly 14 times, adding the problem isn't the number of police, but the soft-on-crime judges who keep releasing career criminals. And specifically, there is information, we'll get to that here in a moment, about this judge. There are a number of spokes in the wheel of justice, if you will. And there are some aspects of crime that can be affected by the number of police officers that are out there. But you can have one police officer per citizen. If the people who get caught committing crimes recognize and understand that they are not going to be held accountable in any meaningful way, they continue to commit crimes. This is why you see these different reports about the recidivism rate and how you'll have 90% of the crimes are committed by the same 2 or 3% of the criminals out there. You have the vast majority of crimes in so many of these cities committed by people over and over and over again. And we've seen the anecdotal evidence of that recognition by the criminals in numerous instances when they get arrested, mocking police, saying, I don't know why you're even bothering. I'm going to be out in an hour anyway. Even up to and including murder. And it's not just the big cities. There was, I guess Las Vegas is considered a big city where, I think it was Las Vegas where that dentist was run down by two psychopaths and they filmed it while laughing. And while one of those individuals was being fingerprinted. He mocked the whole system, saying, I'm just going to be right back out on the street. I don't understand what the point of this is. This is so you've got to have the two components together. You have to have the recognition that, one, if you commit a crime, you feel as if, and you recognize the likelihood that you will be caught because of the amount of law enforcement that is out there able to investigate and track you down. But then there also must be the recognition that if I'm held accountable for this, it is going to be in a very serious manner. There are all of these discussions that occur, whether or not stiff penalties actually deter crime. And I think that you have penalties for a couple of reasons. One, it is to get bad people off the streets. But then there are those people that are bad people that they don't care. They'll commit crime anyhow. But there is a segment of the population that is going to alter their behavior based off of what the punishment may be. And we know this to be the case because criminals have acknowledged this. Individuals that are here in this country illegally have acknowledged that the reason they are in the cities that they're in oftentimes is because it is a sanctuary city. And they know that they will not have to deal with the same level of repercussions, or at least in the previous administrations, as they would if they were in a non-sanctuary city. There was audio we played, it was during the peak a couple of years ago, of just the insane crime in New York City. And there was this, there was a report on how these criminals, they would commit all these crimes in New York. And the money that they would get, the crimes weren't generally stealing money, but they would do the smash and grab, and then they would turn around and sell those things on different social media platforms, and then take that money, and they would travel to Florida to spend the money. And then they would go all the way back to New York to commit the crime. And in the discussion with this news outlet, the question was asked of the investigative reporter, well, why do they bother going back and forth? Why don't they just stay in Florida? And he said that universally, because they all said, if they get caught doing this in Florida, they're going to suffer. Where in New York, they don't have to worry about it. They'll just be put right back out on the streets. And so what happens, unfortunately, is oftentimes, much like the call for gun control, you will have people on the left that will call for things that, while they may be a necessary component to dealing with crime, it is not in and of itself going to make much of a difference. And so, this is something I expect we're going to see in the run-up to the midterm elections and the presidential election, is you are going to see the left portray this as a need for more police. And again, while more police may certainly be warranted, if you have prosecutors, these George Soros paid-off, bought prosecutors from the left that are known to be soft on crime, it doesn't matter how many police you have on the street. You are not going to take care of this problem. And I expect fully the way that this is going to play out politically is you are going to have, much like, remember the border situation when we were in the run-up to the election, Republicans were in control of Congress, and the Democrats were playing the border issue as one that could be fixed if only Republicans would pass funding. Remember that? And the media was portraying it as something that was torpedoed by Donald Trump because he, for political purposes, wanted the border to stay unsecure. And that's why he, behind the scenes, torpedoed the only option we were told was going to be a successful option to fix the border, and that was more funding. Well, of course, that was completely untrue, and that was demonstrated through Trump's election, not having any more funding, but fixing the problem in about a week. I expect fully what Democrats are going to be doing in the run-up to the midterms in particular. They are going to shift this crime problem. They're going to recognize that they can't lie about it any longer, and they are going to say this is a funding issue. We have to have more funding, just like the border issue. And they are going to say that if, Republicans are refusing to fund police, Republicans are using their position of power in order to not give us the tools that are necessary to further solve the crime problem that we've already made headway on, but we just have to have more funding. But it isn't about funding. It's about how you go about doing it, how you go about using the funding. You can have quadruple the funding, but if you still have prosecutors that take these criminals and put them right back out on the streets, it's not going to solve a lick of things. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you, the Pyramid Roofing Company. This time of the year, it can be pretty brutal on your roof. Fluctuating temperatures that can actually cause shifting, and that shifting can cause gaps between your shingles or nail pops, and both of those items can open you up for potential leaks later down the road. If you have an older roof, or maybe it's just been a while since you've had a roof inspection, now is the time to do it. The Pyramid Roofing Company, they offer free roof inspections, and they'll check for everything from nail pops to hail damage, shingle blistering, and they'll even get inside of your attic, and they will check your decking as well. They're upfront and honest about the work that needs to be done, and whether you need residential, commercial, or metal roofing services, the Pyramid team will get y'all taken care of. So if it is time to have the Pyramid Roofing Company team out to your home, reach out to Josh today. You can find all of the contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at KSGF.com.
Regarding Transportation Secretary Duffy noting that there would be an investigation, someone texted in on the Pyramid Roofing Company text line, betting what they're looking at is how many crimes on video have actually been prosecuted or just let go. That is a really good point. And this particular case is getting a lot of attention for a number of reasons. There are a number of components at play here. One, anytime there's video, it is going to get attention. You also have the fact that here is somebody that came to the United States for a better life, specifically a safer one, leaving war-torn Ukraine, and this is the fate that she is dealt. It is also this completely unprovoked attack. People see themselves sitting on a train, sitting on a bus, sitting on a bench, when they see that girl that's sitting there just on her phone after working a shift and then just needlessly, without any provocation, being stabbed. And that is something that really grabs people's attention. That being said, these mass transit murders are nothing new, and the crimes are nothing new. And some of them have been highlighted in the past. New York, there was the woman that was lit on fire. We've seen these horrific stories of dead people being sexually assaulted. And it was a few years ago out in California, I forget which rail line, but the closed circuit video that was active on the line, much like we've seen the video from South Carolina. And at some point, they changed their policy to stop releasing that footage to the public because they were afraid that due to the fact that virtually all of the crimes were committed by people of color, that it would feed into racism. And so they began to stop allowing the public to see these crimes actually occurring. So that will be an interesting component of that. That's a really good point. If they find that these criminal acts are happening at a frequency that the average person is not aware of, and maybe not even murder, but assault, sexual assault. And I suspect that this sort of thing happens particularly in the cities at a much greater frequency than a lot of people probably realize. Even maybe those in the people who ride the transportation, they're probably aware of it. But the rest of us, we may have an idea, but we may find out that we've underestimated how frequently this is happening and ask ourselves, why hasn't this been made into a bigger deal? This is what happens when you create low expectations for your culture. We've seen it here in Springfield, in which the people that are business owners downtown, some have said they quit calling the police because what's the point? Crime, this is just living in Springfield, particularly having the business or living downtown or in the downtown area. This is the standard of living one has come to expect. And I would argue that in so many of these other cities, it becomes such commonplace. And unfortunately, oftentimes, it is the people of color that are lower class that suffer, and we're beginning to see increasingly how little the people who run these major cities actually care about that segment of the population. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed.
Fields Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see mostly sunny skies with a high near 84. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 61. For your Wednesday, mostly sunny with a high near 90. And taking a look at Thursday, sunny and hot with a high near 94.
The problem with crime is multifaceted. Part of it is the punishment, and people don't fear the punishment. And not everyone is going to find the punishment as a deterrent, but if those people do commit a crime, they should go away for a long while. This is part of the way that you clean up the streets. And what we're seeing here is the mindset of so many of these criminals that recognize that it does not bother them in the least to get arrested for crimes. The judge of the killer in South Carolina is under fire for allowing a schizophrenic repeat offender to walk free without bond 7 months before he fatally stabbed that Ukrainian refugee. You notice how suddenly people on the left don't seem to care so much about Ukrainians? They only care about them when they're over there, when there's somebody else's problem, when they can virtue signal by changing their avatars to these Ukrainian flags, or stand on the side of the road, or near the little walkover bridge on South Campbell by Steak and Shake holding Ukrainian flags. But the minute that it's a problem here, particularly one that highlights a problem that is facilitated and oftentimes created by their political party, suddenly we shouldn't care about these individuals any longer. Magistrate Judge Teresa Stokes released DeCarlos Brown Jr. on January 21st on a written promise that he would appear after he was arrested on charges of misusing the 911 system during a police welfare check. Brown, who's homeless and diagnosed with schizophrenia, told officers he believed man-made material was implanted in his body, controlling his movements. He had been arrested many times previously. When officers advised him it was a medical matter and left, Brown became agitated, called 911 again, prompting officers to arrest and charge him with a Class 1 misdemeanor. Despite his already then violent criminal history, his mental illness, and his lack of any address, Stokes, the judge, let him go with absolutely no bond required. In the days following the killing, social media users flooded the Facebook page of Second Chance Services Unlimited, a Charlotte mental health provider, alleging that Stokes worked there as well. The organization responded by stating, "This has nothing to do with us. This is a behavioral health clinic helping people in the community with substance abuse and mental health issues. Please stop posting on this page. We have nothing to do with the law." A representative for Second Chance hung up the phone when asked by the Washington Examiner whether the judge had worked there since 2023. The group's website is also not currently online, and it's unclear when the page was removed. Stokes' name appears as a now deleted bold profile listing her as a director of operations and a magistrate, but that listed role could not be confirmed independently. What is verifiable is that the judge previously co-founded a separate mental health help venture called Pinnacle Recovery Services in 2015, a Michigan-based nonprofit organization that provided housing and recovery services to underserved individuals, according to her own LinkedIn account and a previous news report. In 2021, she helped open Wing Heaven Sports Haven, a sober sports bar in Lansing, after losing both a brother and a nephew to overdose, according to a local Fox affiliate. Local experts who spoke to the Washington Examiner said that even absent verified current ties to Second Chance, Stokes' advocacy background raises serious concerns about the appearance of conflicts when ruling on mental health cases. And whatever the reason, whatever the motivation behind releasing this psychopath out back in the street so that he could murder, the result is part of the problem here. And I would also caution, along with the fact that the left, I believe, is going to start saying that the real problem here is funding. We just need more money. We need Republicans in Congress and Donald Trump to pass legislation, new federal crime bill that will give us the resources we need. It is not a resources issue any more than the border was a resources issue when Democrats made the same play then. It is an execution issue. Somebody had texted in, if they just want more resources, heck, why not get the manpower along with it, just like Trump did in D.C., because they don't want to fix the problem. Now, I know that was a rhetorical text that was sent in, but it's a good point. They just want the money. They don't want to fix the problem. The problems are fixable. Trump demonstrated that in Washington, D.C. This is a willful decision to not fix these problems. And you can talk all day long about the reasons for it. Is it just to have campaign issues to run on? Or is it, this misguided belief that if we're kind to criminals, that one day they'll just turn around and be like, golly gee whiz, people have been really nice to us lately. Maybe we'll stop stabbing them needlessly in the neck while on the mass transit system. Whatever the rationale behind it, it does not work. I believe that something else we're going to start seeing, we've already gotten hints of this, is almost, I wouldn't say replacing, but supplementing the call for gun control as the answer to fix all of these problems, is the call for more mental health resources. Because that is, and I'm not saying that there isn't need for mental health resources to be available to some people. But this blanketed use of that term, like the blanketed use of gun control as the end-all be-all, as this sort of solution that, well, if only Republicans would do it, then all of these problems would be solved, is once again just a way to politicize this, but at the same time to make it appear as if the answer to this is easy. It's just the political opposition that won't give more money to mental health, because the thing is, no matter how much you give, no matter how much money you give to have mental health resources available to individuals, it will never be enough. Because not all of this is mental health. Some of this, of course, it depends on your version of mental health, but in the context of, I think some people, when they think of mental health and they tie mental health to these crimes, they believe, and that definition for a lot of people is they can't help it. And as it was noted, I think Greg Gutfeld made this point recently. These people, many of these people who commit these sorts of crimes, they very deliberately target their victims, and then they demonstrate they know what they did was wrong because they use their mind and their actions to try to get away with it. It isn't a coincidence that so many of these victims are young, smaller women. That is a deliberate act. These aren't people that are walking into a motorcycle bar and deciding to take on 80 motorcycle gang members. Someone that would do that would arguably be insane. The idea that you could take on 80, gang members, just yourself, is the sort of thing most people would say, what were they thinking? But coincidentally, these individuals are always attacking defenseless, smaller-framed women. There was a former professor just in the last couple of days, the report surfaced, of Auburn University, looked like a smaller-framed woman, and here she was just walking her dog through the park and brutally murdered. And these individuals, they work to cover their tracks. So that demonstrates these are individuals who are specifically targeting people they know they can easily kill, and they are taking actions afterwards that demonstrate they know what they did was wrong. That is not crazy. They may be evil, they may be bad, but they know what they are doing. And they're taking steps to make it easier for themselves to do it, and taking steps to try to get away with it. So, this idea that somehow, with just the right magical formula of mental health facilities and accommodations, is going to be the thing that takes care of all of these problems is, again, like a call for gun control. It's something that they can always call for, knowing that no matter how many resources are provided, they can always say that there needs to be more, and the reason these problems aren't fixed is because there aren't more resources that are available. So it gives them an out every single time. They are the great problem solvers. It's just people won't give enough resources. And as I acknowledged, there are some people out there who could very well benefit from having some sort of mental health offerings to them, but that is not the root of this problem. The other component to this is the recognition that you've got two approaches when it comes to dealing with people with severe mental health, the sort of mental health that makes them a danger to society. You have one approach, which I would argue is the Trump approach. Lock them away. They are a danger. If they are out there on the streets, they are going to hurt or even kill innocent people. Then there is the other approach, and that is it isn't their fault. They can't be treated like criminals because of something they can't help. Would you lock up somebody with cancer? Mental health is like a cancer. You can't just, it's a disease. And that isn't an approach that is going to help either. So even if we do decide that, we've got in a certain capacity a mental health issue at play here, that is very far removed from determining which path we take in dealing with those mental health people, these people with the mental health issues. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. You got home buying needs, you have home selling needs. When we spoke with her at Scramblers during the Friday Road Show, the Friday before last, she noted that there has been a shift in the market. There are actually more homes on the market than we have been accustomed to for some time. And so if you're looking to sell your home, she's just said, be prepared. This isn't like it was a couple of years ago where you don't have to worry about fixing anything up hardly, because it is an absolute seller's market and people are outbidding each other and they're offering more than your asking price. That's not the environment that we're in any longer. And while every situation is different, you could be dealing with 30 or 60 days on the market. And a lot of these buyers out there feel now that they've got a little bit of wiggle room to say, well, yeah, we're interested. We want to buy your home, but we'd like to have this fixed up, or we'd like for you to take care of that. And so it's just sort of a heads up that the market has changed a bit. This is why, whether you're looking to sell or buy your home, you need Emily Johnson, because she knows and has her finger on the pulse of all of these changes day to day, hour to hour. And you just read the reviews, either Google, Facebook, Zillow, otherwise, and you're going to see why it is so many people, including me, recommend for home buying and home selling Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. The Pyramid Roofing Company text line: the vast majority of homeless people are either untreated mental illnesses or substance abuse problems. Is the government just going to round all those people up and then do what with them? There are no mental institutions to put people in. Do they just go to jail? See, and this is the point I was making earlier. This is the thing that's not really being discussed. You do have the rhetorical comments by people like Trump that say these people need to be locked away, but I can guarantee you that is not what everyone believes, particularly if you're going to look along ideological lines. People on the left see that as cruel, see that as cruel and unusual punishment for something that isn't a crime. Mental illness is just that, it's an illness. And that's a discussion we haven't even begun to have in this country. We did once upon a time. I mean, frankly, it cracks me up that Trump uses the term insane asylum because that is such an old term. And I don't know why. I just think that's funny when he refers to insane asylums. One of the individuals that's largely responsible for the fact that we no longer just take these people off the streets and put them into what was once upon a time, or in Trump terminology, called insane asylums, is Geraldo Rivera. And it was back when he was a journalist that nobody really knew. He did an expose on a quote unquote, I don't know if it was called an insane asylum at the time. I mean, this was in the 70s, I want to say. I'm just kind of ballparking the time frame. I'm pretty certain it was prior to the 80s. If it was 80s, it was early 80s. But it was during the time period when we did. Like, somebody was crazy and you put them in a straitjacket and you took them off to a hospital where, of course, these are government funded. So you know what that looks like. And Geraldo had somehow gotten, I think, video footage and had done this expose, and people were horrified by what they saw, because they saw what were considered to be subhuman conditions. And I think reasonable people can understand why. You're talking about government workers oftentimes. You're talking, not that they don't care, but you're talking about dealing with people that have severe mental issues, and at times they have to be restrained in order to protect not only others, but to protect themselves. The conditions, because of the psychological and mental problems a lot of those people would have, were unsanitary, to say the least. It really was, for a lot of people, a visual horror show nightmare, and people were outraged by that because human beings are sympathetic, and they felt this is horribly wrong. We cannot continue on this way, and it really kind of began this movement to shut down those sorts of facilities. And so, to the question of the person who texted in, everybody's talking about the need to do something about these individuals that keep them away from other people that could be victims. That is a discussion that we have not even begun to really have in this country. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. Ozark's elder law, it's, I guess to some degree, appropriate transition, talking about issues when it comes to mental health. And mental health, the problem with that discussion is, again, it's such a wide span. I mean, you got people that are just certifiably dangerous and crazy, but then we also talk about, well, we don't want to stigmatize mental health, and that's because it is. It's just like any sickness. I mean, the flu, you can have it affect you slightly, and then some people die from it. Mental illness is the same, but oftentimes you or your loved one may find themselves in the sort of position because of whether it's mental health issues or anything along those lines where they are unable to make decisions for themselves. And the folks at Ozark's Elder Law, these are your go-to to make sure that if you happen to find yourself in this situation, and it could be medical, you could be in an accident, be in some sort of incapacitated state, and you can't make decisions for yourself. If you have not legally put all of that into writing, and I'm not talking something you download on the internet, I'm talking Ozark's elder law, then you will be at the mercy of government, and they'll decide who decides, including themselves perhaps. And in Missouri, just because you're married to someone, that does not mean that you are legally able to make all of those decisions. Ozark's elder law, free consultation. They have 10 area locations for you. You can visit them online, give them a call, give them a visit, and that consultation, again, is a courtesy to you. OzarksElderLaw.com and Nick's endorsements at KSGF.com. Oops. Now, already, what did I do here? Screwed things up. Here we go. Greta Thunberg's little boat that she's on allegedly hit by a drone attack. This according to video that is highly suspect. Have you seen this video yet?
Oh, no.
I'm 90. Now, you never know, but I'm 95% sure this is not legit. And if they were hit by a drone, it certainly wasn't the Israelis. So there's video that I suppose, well, I guess it's kind of spliced together, produced, if you will, because it is, the beginning of it is a fixed camera on the ship. And you see, it's on the side of the ship, and it's sort of facing towards the front of the ship. And you see this bright flash of light that looks, I don't know, maybe what you would expect from a Roman candle or a flare. Now, it's dark, so really to have that sort of flash of light in the dark of night and for it to appear very bright on camera, it doesn't really have to be that much of a bright light. And you see it in the video, and then it splices to a guy running around by himself on the ship. Like in the video, the portion I saw of it, you didn't really see anyone else. And he has a life jacket on, and he's just screaming, "We've been hit, we've been hit." He's screaming hysterically that they're under attack. The boat is on fire, but it doesn't appear as if it sank. Anyone got hurt. To me, this has all of the hallmarks of completely faked. Like they're needing attention. People aren't mad enough at the Jews, and so they got to make it look like here their humanitarian effort is under attack by the Israelis. But like I said, you never know. The Israelis could have been like, hey, let's just throw a little something over there to scare them. I highly doubt that that's what occurred. I don't know that there would be much of an upside to that. But when you see the video, you really are like, yeah, I don't. Didn't a few months ago at one point they claimed that their ship got sabotaged? Do you remember that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel
This
okay.
seems like more of the same.
I watched the video.
Uh-huh.
And you would think, and I don't know a lot about drone strikes, but I feel like it would do a lot more damage than what was portrayed. Because they have photos now of the aftermath, and it basically just looks like there is like a light dusting of like black soot. Like that's the best way to describe it.
The whole thing.
It didn't sink.
Or do any real serious damage. Do you know what drones do? They apparently don't. It just more and more. It just seems as if it's total, not even very good BS at that. It appears to be laughable, a laughable attempt to look as if you are under attack. That is not an attack. I mean, that is, I've seen worse damage done and a more dire situation from somebody smoking in their car and they think they flick the cigarette out the window and it goes in the back seat. More damage done from something like that than what has been done to Greta Thunberg's boat here. But even the running, I didn't see anyone else in the video, or at least the portion I saw. I think the one I saw was about 90 seconds or so. But I don't know. I think that it could very well be fake. I'm sure a full investigation will tell us. Speaking of fake, we're going to get news, but the birthday card that the Wall Street Journal had reported on as being a birthday card from Donald Trump to Epstein, however many decades ago, which by itself is absolutely meaningless anyhow. But apparently, all indications are that it's fake. In fact, there were three forensic analysis done, three separate, and they all came to the same conclusion that, this is not Trump's signature. This is A total fake. Now, what also has been released is a card from Bill Clinton to Jeffrey Epstein that apparently hasn't been proven to be a fake. So perhaps a little bit of distraction here, as always. Whatever it is that the left accuses Trump of or MAGA Americans of is what they actually are responsible for themselves. So some of the details of this coming up here, and then also this the discharge petition, which has been going on parallel to the committee's investigation, in which you have Massey and Ro Khanna, who's a Democrat from California, Massey, Republican, Kentucky. They have tried to push to force a vote to force the Department of Justice, basically every division of the executive branch, to release absolutely everything regarding Jeffrey Epstein. And this failed. It got blocked. You had some Republicans voting to block it, or for it, rather. And then you had a lot of Democrats voting for it, but enough that sided with Republicans to prevent it from being released. Interesting turn of events. I mean, after all, what has the constant chant been from the Democrats? Release the files, release the files. Well, if all of the Democrats in Congress voted to do that, then there would have been a much different outcome. But because enough crossed over to side with Republicans, it got blocked. Now, this is very deliberate, and I'll explain that coming up as well. Pyramid Roofing Company text line is 417-447-KSGF. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see mostly sunny skies with a high near 84. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 61. For your Wednesday, mostly sunny with a high near 90. And taking a look at Thursday, sunny and hot with a high near 94.
Yeah, I think most Americans, well, Americans who understand what the so-called cuts of these SNAP benefits, the people they affect, are perfectly not just fine with it, but welcome it. The verbiage, I just feel. Now, the description that Mike Landis gave there is accurate. That the talks about however many millions are going to be cut from the benefits, but then elaborates accurately so that is because there are going to be requirements put in place for people who can fulfill the requirements, but it's estimated they will choose not to. So if you are basically a able-bodied working individual or able to work, and you choose that, not to, at least 20 hours a week, then you will forego those benefits. So it's a choice. And it's part of the reason that the term cut, I think, is not the best term to use. It's like if, my neighbor has a swimming pool and lets lots of people come over and swim in the swimming pool all of the time, but then says, you know what, we're going to put in a new requirement. Anyone who comes over has to bring a six-pack of beer. Am I banned from the swimming pool? No. If I choose to not bring over a six-pack of beer as a new requirement to swim in my neighbor's swimming pool, that's my choice. That is a deliberate choice that I am making. And however many people decide that I'm not going to try to get a job or do volunteer work or get a job even though I'm able to in order to continue to get these benefits, that is their choice. And you'd think a political party, the Democrats, that tout being pro-choice, that's something that they would fully embrace. Latest traffic. The White House noting the Wall Street Journal's own reporting has proven the illegitimacy of the birthday card the outlet previously claimed that Donald Trump sent to Jeffrey Epstein back in 2003. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt took to X, responding to the Journal's report, which included an image of the card in question. Leavitt writing, the latest piece published by the Wall Street Journal proves the entire birthday card story is false. As I've said all along, it's very clear President Trump did not draw this picture. He did not sign it. President Trump's legal team will continue to aggressively pursue litigation. The outlet first reported on the card's contents in July, but did not publish it, which right there was a huge red. Think about the absurdity of that. You have an entire story or significant portion of a story around a birthday card, and specifically the content of the birthday card, but you don't show that birthday card. You don't show the signature. You don't show any of it. If that isn't a huge red flag. Leavitt also blasted Wall Street Journal reporter Joe Palazzolo, accusing him of sending a request for comment to the White House the exact moment the story was actually published. She posted, furthermore, the, quote, reporter who wrote this hatchet job reached out for comment at the exact, all caps, same minute he published his story, giving us no time to respond. This is fake news to perpetrate the Democrat Epstein hoax. Back in July, Trump responded saying, this is not me, it's a fake thing. It's a fake Wall Street Journal story. I never wrote a picture in my life. I don't draw pictures of women. It's not my language. It's not my words, he said. Apparently, this is something that a forensic linguistic analysis conducted by 3 leading AI research systems unanimously concluded when they found that there was a, quote, extremely low probability that the birthday letter to Jeffrey Epstein that included the sketch, that it was extremely low probability it was authored by Trump, citing, quote, profound and pervasive deviations from Trump's documented writing patterns spanning 4 decades of public and private correspondence. One AI research report concluding the stylistic gulf between the note and Trump's known communication patterns is not merely a matter of slight variation, it represents a fundamental and pervasive mismatch across nearly every linguistic measure. The White House, of course, touting all of this information. The Daily Wire analyzed the full text of the alleged letter provided by the Journal using the deep research function of 3 top AI reasoning modules, Claude 4.0 Opus Thinking, Perplexity Sonar, and Gemini 2.5 Pro. The Claude Opus 4.0 model used 257 sources, including Trump's writings from the 1980s all the way through 2025. It concluded the letter exhibits multiple linguistic anomalies that diverge sharply from Trump's established communication patterns across 4 decades of authentic writings. Quote, the alleged 2003 Trump-Epstein birthday letter exhibits multiple linguistic anomalies that diverge sharply from the established communication patterns used by Trump across 4 decades. A comprehensive forensic analysis comparing the letter's distinctive features against Trump's documented idiolect from 1980 through 2025 raises substantial questions about its authenticity. The analysis finds that phrases like enigmas never age and may every day be another wonderful secret present in the alleged letter, representing a level of metaphorical sophistication absent from Trump's authentic corpus. However, the most striking discrepancy lies in the letter's third-person theatrical dialogue format, where Trump and Epstein engage in an imaginary conversation beginning with voiceover. There must be more to life than having everything. This narrative device contradicts Trump's consistent first-person direct communication style. And it goes on and on and on from these three different top-of-the-line AI investigatory tools that are available to use, that, I mean, across every metric that is available, whether it is the style, whether it is the signature, whether it is the first person versus third person, there's virtually nothing in that whatsoever that indicates anything other than the letter's a fake. This is like the George Bush letter all over again, back when Dan Rather found the beginning of the end of his career presenting this letter that was said to be a letter regarding then, I always forget if it was when he was first running or running for re-election, but George Bush, and it was supposedly a letter that had been obtained by Dan Rather proving that he got special treatment. And it was a huge scandal. And it turned out to be proven untrue because that particular font that was in the letter wasn't something that was utilized or available at the time, and so it became clear it was something that had been written recently. And here we go again. This time, Wall Street Journal, a letter that is said to have been from Donald Trump to Jeffrey Epstein, but when analysis is done, it's shown that everything about it says it was not Donald Trump. I'm sure I'm sure the media is going to report on this in a completely straightforward and honest manner. Now, after the break, Bill Clinton letter in Epstein birthday book among new files released by the House Oversight Committee. Uh-oh. So, by all appearances and advanced AI technology, three different evaluations, the letter that Donald Trump, according to the Wall Street Journal, had sent to Jeffrey Epstein is a fake. It's not something that was written by Donald Trump. However, it appears that Bill Clinton did write a nice little birthday letter in which he wrote to Jeffrey Epstein. According to reports, it's reassuring, isn't it, to have lasted as long. across all the years of learning and knowing, adventures and ineligible word. Furthermore, to have your childlike curiosity, the drive to make a difference, and the solace of friends. Well, clearly he raped girls on Epstein Island. Well, I mean, if there's an existence of a letter, right? I mean, that's what we were told about the letter that turned out not to be from Donald Trump, that because he wrote him a birthday card for his 50th birthday back in 2003, he's clearly a pedophile. I mean, you see the signs. I don't know if you've noticed that whenever these upper age left-wing white people are having their little No Kings protest or their Stop Fighting Crime protest against Donald Trump, you'll see signs in there that refer to Trump as a pedophile. Because, we're told that giving somebody a birthday card in 2003 who was a pedophile means that you are too. Now, unfortunately for the left, it turns out Trump's birthday card letter wasn't actually from Trump, but old Bill Clinton had one in there. So do we use the same rules? Same standards apply? I think you and I know the answer to that. Now, the Republicans have blocked an Epstein file discharge petition along with help from a handful of Democrats. What does that mean next?
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see mostly sunny skies with a high near 84. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 61. For your Wednesday, mostly sunny with a high near 90. And taking a look at Thursday, sunny and hot with a high near 94.
Republicans blocking the Epstein file discharge petition. Now, this is the strictly political aspect of much of this, at least for the Democrats. You have the Republican Kentucky Representative Thomas Massie, along with Democrat California Rep. Ro Khanna's discharge petition, which would force the government to release the Jeffrey Epstein files. It got 215 signatures, 3 short of the majority. As of publication, Massie is one of only 4 Republicans in the House to sign the petition, compared with 211 of the 212 House Democrats. So they're -1. Colorado Representative Lauren Boebert, South Carolina Representative Nancy Mace, Georgia Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene joined Massie in signing the petition. The Daily Caller asked Massey whether he is confident the petition will ultimately reach the 218 signatures needed, and if pushback from House leadership suggests it's unlikely to succeed. Quote, during our appearance on ABC yesterday, my colleague, Representative Ro-Khanna, announced we will have the 218 votes needed for the Epstein discharge petition by the end of this month. When this vote happens, will your congressman vote for transparency and justice or against it? The petition titled Epstein File Transparency Act was filed on July 15th to push the House to vote on fully releasing all files relating to Epstein. Khanna joined forces with Massey to submit the resolution, which would need at least 218 signatures, a simple majority, to reach the floor vote. But thus far, they haven't received them. Swalwell, who was absent last week, posted on X that he will sign the petition once he returns to Washington, D.C., which will bring the total number of signatures to 216. Now, Massey, of course, has clashed with Trump over this. Now, at the same time, you have had Trump utilizing the judicial system to try and get much information that hasn't been released, that being primarily grand jury testimony. Two separate Democrat-appointed judges have blocked the administration from doing that. Now, the political upside for Democrats here is the ability to continue to spread disinformation to a population that really doesn't know what's going on, and to their base that really doesn't care. They want to be told, that, oh, this is all a cover-up by Trump. Oh, he's writing birthday cards to Epstein, and clearly he's trying to cover this up. And I would venture to say virtually none of those people know that the administration has been turned down by two separate judges to release such information. And you have this separate committee, of course, that is sifting through and also looking to release information, and has been, hence the latest regarding the birthday cards. Now, the frustration a lot of Republicans have here is that this allows the Democrats to claim that there's some sort of cover-up when they are the ones who for years have been doing everything they can to make this go away. And, of course, we know the background with Pam Bondi and that still, to me, unexplained, unforced error that took all of this and allowed the Democrats to falsely portray it as something that Trump is trying to cover up. So much so that Democrats are claiming that's the only reason he's trying to clean up crime, is to distract from the Epstein files. Now, this could, of course, very well end up being the sort of thing that Democrats find themselves. I mean, there's almost a game of chicken potentially going on here. On one hand, you have Republicans that are opposed to having Congress force the release of any and all information, much of which, and I can understand this as being legitimate, the fact that there will be people's names in there that didn't ever do anything wrong whatsoever. And if you happen to be one of those individuals, I can certainly understand. And if your name was in there, but because of how the Democrats operate, I mean, look, they accused Trump of being a pedophile because of a fake birthday card from 2003. When you observe how the media and the Democrats will take something that is completely benign and utilize it in order to destroy political opposition, you can understand how some people out there who might be completely innocent, but their names happen to be mentioned in some sort of grand jury testimony in a benign fashion, but still worry that they will be completely destroyed because of the way that the left utilizes this information to try and destroy people. And I can see how a number of Republicans would say, listen, we're going to release this, but we have to make sure that we're not putting innocent people's names out there so that the media and particularly if they're Republican donors. I mean, we could be talking about a lot of people here who aren't even really known. But if you are somebody who donated to Donald Trump or donated to a pro-life cause or happens to be a Christian, and your name incidentally gets mentioned in something in which you ultimately have no connection to doing anything wrong, you know the media is going to go through all of that, and they are going to use it in order to try and claim this is proof that Republicans were trying to cover up for their people, cover up for the Christian right wing, cover up for anyone and everyone that they are going to try and portray potentially as having some sort of nefarious relationship with Epstein and his island. Now, the game of chicken here could very well be that at the same time, and I think this is what most people anticipate, that there are a number of Democrats, perhaps many of them donors, again, not necessarily people whose names that you and I know, but that they will be exposed. And the Democrats are banking on the fact that Republicans are not going to allow this to move forward, which gives them protection then in terms of keeping their people and their donors protected. Now, if Massey turns out to be correct and they do get enough other Republicans to switch over to vote, it will be interesting to see if the Democrats all hold true, if they all continue to vote for the pushing of the release of all this information, or will we see a couple of them break off? Not even necessarily voting against it, but maybe voting present, or maybe not showing up to vote at all, denying the, Massey and Ro Khanna the number of votes needed in order to force the White House, the executive branch, to release any and all files that are related to this. So I think there's potentially a little bit of a game of chicken here going on based off the fact that it's conventional wisdom that Democrats are the ones that are seriously implicated in this. And just like the Russian collusion hoax, their desperate attempt to tie Trump in any capacity to anything nefarious has thus far boiled down to a birthday card that turned out not even to be really from Donald Trump. That's once again all they have. Fake evidence. Not to mention, you have to believe that James Comey, that Joe Biden, that Kamala Harris, that all of those people have been covering for Donald Trump for years. That they had access to this information, that they would have, the Department of Justice and the FBI. This is what Republicans have been pushing for some time, is trying to figure out what was going on here. And you have to believe, and this is how deranged some of the people on the left are, they have themselves convinced. Well, they don't even think about it in reality because there is no convincing of oneself. Why is it that Biden would cover for Trump? Why would Kamala Harris cover for Trump? Why would James Comey? Why would Clapper? Why would all of these people who made up evidence, falsified evidence, to try and demonize Trump, why would they hide the truth if the truth was something that was real damning? And I think we know the answer. They wouldn't. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. I like to hit on a number of the incredible deals Pinnaker Honda has. The Pinnaker family, good folks over there, like a new 2026 HRV as low as $299 a month. Honda Pilot 2025 rates as low as 3.49% a month. And, of course, the Pinnaker Advantage, which is a 20% off routine maintenance with purchase of new vehicle. But I wanted to read because I really thought this was a great and detailed review from Wayne regarding, this was just days ago, his visit with the Pinnaker family over there. 5 stars hardly seems fair. 10 stars. I've never dealt with a dealership that goes so far out of their way to provide outstanding customer service before, during, and after the purchase of a vehicle. Just purchased our second vehicle from Pinnaker Honda. Justin Hetherington is the best. Ask for him. Had a slight mechanical issue a month after purchasing the vehicle. I called Justin, and he helped me get into Pinnaker Chevy Buick for service. The shop immediately had the car diagnosed and began repairs on the Friday of the Labor Day weekend. Despite the shop being closed over the holiday, they still had the car fixed and ready to go by Tuesday afternoon. I could not have been happier with the service I received. Huge thank you to Monique Carringer, the general manager, for her assistance as well. From the top down, you won't find a friendlier, more professional organization. Pinnaker completely demolishes the car dealership stereotypes. They aren't just looking to make a sale. They're looking for a lifelong relationship, and they really nail it. I wouldn't even consider going to any other dealership for my next vehicle, and neither should you. Pinnaker has my loyal business. What I like about that is the mention of a slight mechanical issue. Because here's what I truly believe about businesses, that it isn't so defining whether errors or unforeseen circumstances that are unfortunate pop up. It's how the business deals with them. And vehicles, particularly pre-owned vehicles, they sometimes have mechanical issues. And that sort of response from the folks at Pinnaker to a slight mechanical issue and the get on top of it, get it taken care of, no hassles whatsoever, is a demonstration of that. Pinnaker Honda, just south of Walnut Lawn on South Campbell. You can also find them at ksgf.com under Nick's endorsements. Ryan Routh, does that name ring a bell? May not. Don't feel bad. He's only one of the 2 individuals that tried to assassinate Donald Trump. But given the normalization of assassination attempts by the left in this country against Republicans and Donald Trump specifically, you can't expect there to be much to-do made about this. I mean, after all, it's just some normal American that was trying to save democracy. Well, the first day of jury selection kicked off yesterday in Fort Pierce, Florida, for the trial of Ryan Routh. Routh, who is representing himself, appeared at the federal courthouse yesterday morning wearing a gray suit, ankle shackles. Prosecutors, Routh questioning jurors to determine whether they can fairly participate in the trial. The jury selection process will identify 12 jurors and 4 alternates for the trial. During jury selection, Routh asked potential jurors their views on the war in Gaza, their position on the U.S. potentially acquiring Greenland, as the president has floated, and how they would act if they were driving and spotted a turtle in the middle of the road. U.S. District Judge Eileen Cannon dismissed Routh's questions as politically charged and said they were unnecessary for jury selection. Quote, "None of the questions on your list have any bearing whatsoever. They were off base, sir, and have no relevance to jury selection," Cannon said. When Routh attempted to speak in protest, Cannon warned him not to interrupt. Routh also said a former coworker listed on his witness list, Eric Zuniga, would not testify on Routh's behalf because he lives in Costa Rica and, quote, likes his freedom and doesn't want to get arrested or deported. Routh then withdrew his name as a potential witness. Routh also said yesterday another potential witness he listed also is unlikely to appear due to scheduled travel to Vietnam during the trial. After yesterday's session wrapped up, Cannon asked, that being the judge, if there was anything else, prompting Routh to say that he is, quote, still in a situation at the jail where I can't sleep. I don't know if they could move me to general population or something, he said, but Cannon once again shut him down and said the statement wasn't appropriate at that time. 27 out of the 60 prospective jurors claimed that they had a hardship that would prevent them from participating in the trial. Meanwhile, Routh claimed he had reservations about many potential jurors but could not identify any specific concerns. Prosecutors, their case claiming Routh sought to kill Trump for weeks, staked out a spot in shrubbery on September 15th of 2024 when a Secret Service agent detected him pointing a rifle at Trump while the then-president candidate played golf at his West Palm Beach country club. Routh aimed his rifle at the agent but abandoned his weapon in the scene after Secret Service agents opened fire on him. And, again, you'd think that this would be a much bigger story than it is. But it gives you real insight into the emotional reaction that the media has to an attempt to assassinate the President of the United States, and that is no big deal. Not worth covering. Who cares? Which is reflected in their interest from the individual who successfully actually shot President or then candidate Donald Trump, former President Donald Trump, the complete and total lack of interest in that individual as well. Because after all, trying to take out Trump is just anything that a normal person would do, right? Much ado about nothing. Normalizing violence. Here's another bit of positive news. Iran no longer has a viable path to produce weapons-grade uranium, a report from some of the world's top nuclear experts concluded on Monday. Now, this is relevant because, as you may recall, there was an attempt to greatly downplay how successful this attempt to scale back, to roll back the nuclear ambitions of Iran actually was. The Trump administration, from the beginning, signaling that the information they had certainly suggested a success, though there were a lot of people that were touted out as so-called experts in the media that suggested perhaps this wasn't nearly as successful as the Trump administration wanted it to be. Maybe it only set it back weeks. Apparently, this was extremely successful. Reports from the International Atomic Agency Association, known as the IAEA, after Operation Midnight Hammer bombed Iran's nuclear enrichment sites, concluded that Iran has no identifiable route to produce weapons-grade uranium in its centrifuge plant for the first time in 15 years. So, again, apparently very successful. And we didn't even have to go to war over it. It was the shortest World War III we ever experienced. Or the shortest world war, I should say, we ever experienced. It was presented as something that was, the potential beginning of World War III that really didn't do much anyway to roll back the ability of Iran to successfully develop nuclear weapons. And as usual, the opposite is what actually occurred. It did not spark World War III, and it did roll back those nuclear capabilities as far as they could possibly be rolled back. There has been an additional drip of information from the manifesto Audrey Hale. I know it seems as if this just every few months or so, there's a new bit of information. Audrey Hale was responsible for the Covenant school shooting in Nashville. That is the school shooting that prompted many religious leaders in Minnesota to meet with Governor Walz, asking for additional protection out of fears that a transgender that had been radicalized may target kids in a religious setting, Christian setting specifically in that state as well. Tim Walz met with them on a number of occasions, never gave them additional security, and then, of course, we saw that shooting happen most recently, taking the lives of 2 children. According to newly released documents yesterday from the FBI, Audrey Hale specifically listed President Donald Trump as on her fantasy murder list. Hale, of course, born a white female, identified as male, notoriously slammed white privilege, women, and Christianity in writings prior to the attack. However, the Metro Nashville Police Department, in their final report earlier this year, said notoriety was Hale's primary motivation. And that, of course, is their rationale for covering all this up. That is their ability to keep or to justify further why it was that seemingly for the first time we decided we did not want the public to know why it was that the public was targeted in such a specific manner. And we were told, well, because they wanted notoriety. Well, you know what? She also wanted her correct pronouns used. And the media certainly didn't stop doing that. You know, this is the inconsistency of a media and this attempt to cover this up and this portrayal of keeping it secret, because if we don't keep it secret, we're going to give that shooter exactly what that shooter wanted, and that was notoriety. Well, that shooter also wanted to be referred to as he. That shooter also wanted to be seen as a male, and as we know with the media, they make sure to not misgender these people, and so it is inconsistent to claim on one hand that we can't release or cover the manifesto because we don't want to feed into their desires, while at the same time insisting on feeding into their desires by using their preferred pronouns. The murder list, back to that, which was dated 2019 to 2020, only contained 4 names according to the documents obtained by the Tennessee Star. 2 of the names were redacted. Trump's name was listed under a column of people that Hale would, quote, like to kill. Hale also listed Cresswell Middle Prep, referring to a middle school that the shooter attended and was allegedly considering attacking before deciding to target the Christian elementary school. Hale attended both schools as a child. And so here again, though we are told that in this country we are to fear white supremacists, we are to fear so-called Christian nationalists. Oops. Please pause. Sorry about that. We are told that we need to fear Christian nationalists. We are told that we are supposed to fear those that are MAGA hat wearing Trump supporters. I mean, there were stories after he got elected about how people in the transgender community were the obtaining of firearms was skyrocketing because they had been so convinced that Trump supporters were going to be hunting them down in the streets. Yet again, what we see is quite the contrary. And it's a left-wing individual that feeds into all of the fear and hate about Donald Trump that listed him as one of the individuals that she would like to have killed. News in 60 seconds, I'm Nick Reed. Springfield's Talk 1041. Welcome to the show. My name is Nick Reed. There's an interesting story in Just the News. And I don't know why I find this, just even that it is a story, somewhat funny. I do believe part of it, because it centers around the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. And if you've ever observed him on television, he's very mild-mannered. I mean, he comes across as very mild-mannered in oftentimes dealing with a hostile media. He's very good about, keeping his cool and responding with factual information that dismantles their disinformation campaigns. And plus, I think you add into that, Treasury Secretary just sounds like the sort of person that is pretty buttoned down, milquetoast, not necessarily the most animated guy in the world. That being said, this is from Just the News, and I'm going to read to you, I'm going to censor out some of it. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent reportedly threatened to punch Federal Housing Finance Agency Director Bill Pulte during a dinner event with senior administration officials, according to Politico, which cited, quote, one eyewitness and 4 other people familiar with what happened. The exchange saw the Treasury Secretary accuse Pulte of criticizing him to President Donald Trump. Quote, why the F are you talking to the president about me? F you, he said. I'm going to punch you in the effing face. Apparently, Bessent also suggested the pair, quote, go outside and told Pulte, quote, I'm going to effing beat your A, end quote. Now, it is a Politico story, but that is pretty specific. And it says one eyewitness, 4 other people familiar with what happened. What does that mean even? But let's not forget, was it not he who supposedly punched Elon Musk? Remember when Elon Musk had that black eye?
Oh, uh-huh.
A few weeks ago, and or maybe a few months ago at this point. And there was a lot of buzz about why he had a black eye. I forgot the reason that he gave for it. But I believe the rumor mill was that it was the Treasury Secretary that clocked him. And if that was the case, and now you have this story where he's threatening to, with dropping the F-bomb and to beat this guy up because he supposedly was bad-mouthing him to Trump. Of course, who knows if it's true or not, but if it isn't true, this obviously would be an attempt to sort of try and discredit, I guess, make him seem as if he is unstable for the purposes of sabotaging his efforts. But it just seems like there would be other ways that are less, I guess humorous. It's just such a specific thing that I kind of find it amusing. Was it supposedly him who hit Elon Musk?
No.
It was someone else?
No, it was allegedly his son that accidentally clocked him.
Well, no, that's what he said. Elon Musk said that. But I know that I remember that because the weekend before that, there were reports, and these were mainstream media reports, we'll have to look this up now, that there was a physical struggle in the White House.
Yeah. So apparently, Elon Musk and Scott Bessent got into a heated shouting match in earshot of President Trump and other officials in the White House. This happened back in April. And then it was a couple weeks later that he had the black eye.
Okay, so it was a couple weeks after that. Okay. Yes. Well, maybe there was a follow-up. I don't know. But the fact that he's connected to the 2 heated arguments, and one of which he threatened to punch a guy in the face, which I don't know why I find that to be even more funny, the specifics of noting where I'm going to punch you. Not just I'm going to punch you or knock you out, I'm going to punch you in the face. I find all of this quite humorous. Could be completely untrue, but you know what? Even if it is true, don't care. Find it amusing. Weather coming up in a moment. Also, Eric Swalwell, who, of course, either got duped or willingly was in a relationship with a Chinese spy, has been picked by Democrats to lead a new J6 committee. Yes, this is dated September 8th, 2025. And of course, he does the traditional compare and contrast, demonstrating that he has a weird perspective on exactly where in history the January 6th event falls into line, around places like Pearl Harbor and 9/11, of course. Right now, the latest news update.
And
So, Basent is gay?
you didn't know that?
I guess I didn't
Yeah.
know that. So, yeah, I mean, that you would mention this could be gay bashing.
It could be.
Even though he was the one threatening the fight.
Well, it could be a smear campaign. It probably never happened.
Yeah, it's gay bashing rumors.
Yeah.
Rumor gay bashing.
Yep, that's it.
You did find another article in which it referenced his supposed a fight with Elon Musk as a WWE style shouting match.
Yep, they got into a chest to chest and WWE like shouting match outside of the Oval Office.
I mean, if this stuff is true about this guy, how hilarious! If he were. It's the fact that he's head of the Treasury. It just is such a buttoned down, seemingly boring sort of accountant type position, and the fact that he, of all the people in the White House, according to those reports, is the loose cannon going around picking fights with everyone in the White House. How unexpected.
Oh, goodness. The first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today, we'll see mostly sunny skies with a high near 84. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 61. For your Wednesday, mostly sunny with a high near 90. And taking a look at Thursday, sunny and hot with a high near 94.
Someone texted in that he is the corn pop of this White House, perhaps.
Oh, yeah.
He's going to come. You need to get old Joe back there with that bike chain that he took out to beat corn pop, which, to my knowledge, is the only time a current or former or presidential candidate as a white person talked about beating a black man with a chain. But it was perfectly okay. It's Democrat privilege. Eric Swalwell, who I really, my instinct is to note him as being one of the biggest idiots in Congress, but man, I don't know. You start thinking about some, particularly on the left, the Jasmine Crockett, some of these others. But, I mean, this is a guy that for years was duped into believing some Chinese spy actually liked him and wanted to be having sex with the guy. I mean, he bought into this. Or he knew that she was a spy, just using him in order to get intel on the United States and thought, well, trade-off is worth it. I don't know which of the two. But this is a guy that, in all of his wisdom, election denier, Democrat leader Hakeem Jeffries, has decided should lead the new J6 committee. Didn't even know there was a new one. I guess this is the Democrats' thing. Democrat California Representative Eric Swalwell said on Monday that the January 6th attack on the Capitol Hill belongs in the same category as Pearl Harbor and 9/11. House Democrat leader Hakeem Jeffries, an election denier, held a news conference yesterday to announce the appointment to the new January 6th subcommittee. During the news conference, he said that day marked one of the three most consequential dates in American history, saying, quote, "Since the Civil War, what are the three most important dates in American history? December 7th, 1941, September 11th, and January 6th. The last two, I didn't even have to give you the years because they are seared into our memories." Swalwell also falsely claimed Trump pardoned insurrectionists, which is, of course, false because no one was even charged with insurrection. And unless you're Joe Biden, you don't pardon people for crimes they haven't yet committed or been accused of. He accused Trump of turning law enforcement officers into villains, targeting investigators and pressuring institutions to downplay the events of January 6th. Saying Donald Trump has pardoned all the insurrectionists. Again, no one's been or ever was accused of that legally. Telling the country whatever crime they commit, even if you kill someone and it's in his name you walk. Donald Trump has made villains of the cops who tried to stop them, even those cops who died. Did he? He's gone after those who investigated him, helped impeach him over January 6th, and even forced the Smithsonian to whitewash and take his name off the January 6th impeachment exhibit, saying that Americans must reject conspiracy theories about both 9/11 and January 6th, like the conspiracy theory that Donald Trump was responsible for it. That conspiracy theory. The conspiracy theory. You remember, this is how nutty some of these people on the left were. There were claims that in the days prior, oftentimes members of Congress will have constituents that come visit, and so they'll give them tours around the Capitol. So, they get a nice personal connection with their constituent. And the Democrats went back and they got footage of some of those tours that were going on before January 6th and then highlighted the ones of Republican members of Congress claiming that they were potentially doing recon, that they were that these might have been January 6th insurrectionists, and these Republican members of Congress were giving them an inside tour of the Capitol so that they could more successfully overthrow the government. That's how insane some of these Democrats were, still are. Democrats picked to join Swalwell on the new committee, Democrat Texas Representative Jasmine Crockett. I mean, who is advising these people? You are going to take what are widely considered to be the most just illegitimate non-serious members of Congress and put them on this committee. I mean, this is fantastic for Trump. This is fantastic for Republicans. That Hakeem Jeffries, it's almost as if he is thinking, how can I make the most insane Democrats grab even more of the attention? Crockett herself has drawn scrutiny for floating many conspiracy theories, including the claim that Trump's own supporters attempted to assassinate him, that Trump was never even shot, the whole thing was made up. And so it is, of course, perfect that Swalwell is decrying conspiracy theories when one of the biggest conspiracy theorists is on that committee. I don't even know what this committee's for. Apparently, again, the Democrats just wanting to damage their reputation even more. the last election, in the lead up to it, outlets like MSNBC, CNN would sit down with swing voters in swing states like Wisconsin and Michigan. We played the audio here. It's why I remember. Asking them about how January 6th was feeding into their decision to vote, and they couldn't find anyone that cared. No one. That were swing voters. I mean, you're insane left-wingers that believe every conspiracy under the sun. Of course, they claim that it's something that may fuel their vote, but we know how they're going to vote anyhow. But in terms of the average American, no one cared. In fact, the one thing that surprised me at the time is the number of swing voters that really didn't even know what January 6th was about. I remember one guy describing it as, saying, I don't even really know what it was about. I think it's some people that were protesting and it got out of hand. That's irrelevant to me. So the fact that the Democrats have decided an issue that they've already lost on before, they're going to have another crack at it here, and they're going to, pick Swalwell, Jasmine Crockett, some of the nuttiest people. Now, I don't know if they're the minority members on the Daily Caller story that I read wasn't referencing it sounds as if this is the Democrats doing their own little committee because they don't like the way that the current January 6th, investigation is going into what cover-ups there were and, the truth behind who forbid the National Guard from being involved and so forth. And so they're going to do their own little committee thing here. But for Pete's sakes, you lost on this before, and you're going to take your nuttiest people and put them forward on it? And have at it. And not to mention the depraved nature. How twisted does a person have to be to watch footage of 9/11? To hear the voicemails of people that are in the towers, that are on the airplanes, calling their loved ones for what they recognize as being the last time that they're ever going to get to hear their, the voices and reach out to those that they love. The people that were crushed in those towers, that died horrible death. For somebody like you're going to put people on on a January 6th committee that think that what those people on 9/11 went through is no worse than what happened on January 6th? I mean, that's Hakeem Jeffries' judgment on full stage, full display. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air. We are in that weird in-between weather right now. One day it's like 90 degrees and the AC is running at full blast. And then the next evening you are reaching for the thermostat because the cool fall nights are slowly starting to creep in. That is why right now is the perfect time to make sure both your AC and your furnace are ready to handle the season change. Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air has got you covered with expert service for both. The Foreman team, they do residential, commercial, and they even have a 24/7 emergency service line in case an issue pops up after normal business hours. They also do indoor air quality testing to help you if you are a person who suffers with allergies. So whether you need a service repair, a tune-up, help with allergens in your home, or maybe it's time for a new unit, reach out to Russell today. You can find all of the contact information for Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at KSGF.com.
We had mentioned on Monday that Trump visiting the Open, the tennis deal, and they're like, oh, he got booed. And I was like, well, I mean, it's mostly rich left-wing celebrities, so wouldn't surprise me any. And there was there's a story in Alternate. He got booed for a straight minute. Levitt mocked for gushing over Trump at U.S. Open. So apparently she was highlighting the fact that he was signing hats there and there were a lot of fans and so forth. And then people on the internet are saying that he was just so clearly booed, which is why I found this to be very interesting. Stephanie Ruhle, extreme left-wing, on the verge of nutty, host at MSNBC, has gone to social media saying, this is not true. There was not some overwhelming booing as it has been reported by outlets like Rolling Stone. Daily Caller noting that MSNBC host Stephanie Ruhle rejected a report by Rolling Stone on Sunday, which alleged that an audience relentlessly booed Trump at the U.S. Open men's final. Rolling Stone published its report, U.S. Open crowd booed Trump repeatedly, which alleged that the boos could be heard during the national anthem and when the president was shown on the arena screen. However, left-winger Ruhle said she did not witness any booing and that the security delays for Trump's appearance did not impact any attendees' time, which was another thing a lot of people were complaining about and again, these were usually left-wingers. It doesn't mean that they're inaccurate, but they said that because of Trump being there, it caused a lot of people to get in later than they had anticipated. But Stephanie Ruhle from MSNBC saying that isn't true either. Quote, I was there. I didn't witness him getting booed, and the delays weren't a big deal. She wrote on X, the day was about great tennis, and the president was there too. Rolling Stone appeared to base its reporting off two users on Blue Sky, the left-wing social media site, who claimed that there were audible boos and a few light claps. And then they note all the stories that Rolling Stone has written in the past that got a lot of attention that turned out not to be true, including stories about campus rape and so forth. Now, here's the thing about any event like that. You can be in a section that is wildly cheering and clapping or wildly booing and jeering, and then people throughout the rest of the stadium have no clue what's going on whatsoever. You can have 90% of a crowd that is behaving in one way, and then you're in a 10% section, and you hear the 10%. Now, sometimes it can be overwhelming, so perhaps the 90-10 is, a more extreme example, and even if you were in a 10% section, you'd hear the 90% section. But you see, it's one of the reasons that I tend to not base my assessment of a crowd booing or a crowd cheering, just a crowd reaction, based off of video somebody filmed from their phone sitting in a seat. Because that person can just, again, have 20 or 30 people around them all cheering or all booing, and that's the only section that's behaving that way, but it sounds like everyone's doing it because you're filming in the middle of it. And so outside of like the professional sound capturing that is done by the either the stadium itself or the networks that might have a capability of really truly giving you an overall sense of what's going on. I just never really too much put stock into somebody sitting there filming it and recognizing that as an overall representation of what's going on in the entire stadium. But I did think it was interesting. Like, why on earth left-wing reporter from MSNBC, Stephanie Rule, would decide to go to X and say, hey, all this booing stuff about Trump, it's not true. And the long waits everyone's talking about, it really wasn't that bad after all. It was a great day for tennis. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe she was drunk.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see mostly sunny skies with a high near 84. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 61. For your Wednesday, mostly sunny with a high near 90. And taking a look at Thursday, sunny and hot with a high near 94.
Did you see, well, first off, did you know that there was a Springfield Public School Hall of Fame?
No.
I didn't know it either. Do you know who's getting inducted into the 2025?
Who?
Mayor McCheese.
Is he going to get a hamburger award?
He's being so. This is a news leader story on this. There's Nancy Allen, who is a 1974 graduate at Glendale, earned a law degree from University of Missouri, returned to Springfield to become one of the region's first female criminal prosecutors. During her 15 years as a Missouri Assistant Attorney General and Assistant Prosecutor, she tried more than 30 jury cases, joined the faculty at MSU, where she taught law classes for 15 years. Applying her legal expertise, Allen wrote and published the Ozarks Mystery Series, which includes 4 books. Her talent caught the eye of legendary author James Patterson, who invited her to collaborate. So quite an impressive resume there. Together, they have co-authored 3 best-selling legal thrillers. Juror number 3, The Jailhouse Lawyer, and The Number 1 Lawyer. Juror number 3 debuted at number 1 on the New York Times bestseller list. Also, Warren Robinette, who was a 1970 graduate of Glendale High School. His legacy is known to gaming and virtual reality enthusiasts for his role in shaping the future of computer-based gaming and learning. In the late 70s, as a young programmer at Atari, Robinette created an adventure, which I don't, depending on your era, many of you probably that's synonymous with Atari, and it was a groundbreaking game that immersed players in a world of castles, dragons, and mazes. Not only was it one of the first graphics-based action-adventure games, it was the first to contain what is now known as an Easter egg. He later co-founded the Learning Company, which became an influential publisher of educational software for children, and his career in technology advanced, or as it advanced, he developed virtual reality software to invent groundbreaking solutions for NASA, University of North Carolina, and HP Labs. And then the other that's noted here is Mayor McCheese. So they list, so here is the resume, and they have a couple quotes where he's actually talking about other people, but the news leader list is his reasons or his background that qualifies him to, also be inducted. He was 4-term Springfield mayor, focused on public safety, economic growth, and quality of life, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. You may remember that's when he went on national television and kind of trashed Springfield. He started his career as a budget analyst for the Missouri Senate Appropriations Committee, eventually serving Chief of Staff Matt Blunt. McCheese also served in key administrative roles, city utilities, MSU, and recently was appointed to serve on the Missouri Ethics Commission. He's a career politician. All right.
And kept the city safe from the Hamburglar.
Oh, yes, that's right.
I forgot to mention that.
Robble, the Hamburglar. Heptus, I assume he could have always, listen, maybe there were some crime issues, but I kept the Hamburglar away. What was it I saw? There was, the council paid some consultant to come in and work on team building or something. There was a news leader article about this too. It was about team building and how great it would be if the council had less split vote decisions, if they would all come together. And one of the things that they talked about is the challenges of overcoming the perception of crime in Springfield. Not the crime itself, but the perception. Because as we all know, that is the approach of the left. It is just to tell you that, well, you're blowing it out of proportion a little bit. We need to do a better job of making sure you understand that, this actually is pretty good, and it's probably about as good as it's going to get. So you should lower your expectations and see what it's just so frustrating to people who understand and recognize you don't have to settle for less. Yet that is what you see in cities that are run by the left, and Springfield is on that path. When you have, on one hand, business leaders that openly acknowledge they don't even bother reporting crime anymore because this is just how it is living in Springfield, and then some consultant comes in to counsel the city council on how to help people get over the perception of crime being a real problem in the city of Springfield. Those are two different worlds. There's the world of reality, and then there's the world of paying someone to come in and convince you that the problem really isn't as big of a deal as people think it is, and then how you can also make sure that people get a better grasp on what's really going on, and you can pass that perception on that crime isn't that big of a deal. And I guess I'd start with the business owners or people who have been, stabbed or attacked or raped or whatever. It'd probably be a good starting point. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Well, since I mentioned it, I thought I'd find that article from the news leader. It was a retreat. Yeah, a
Oh,
nice little retreat. After a series of recent meetings where members' differences, this is the Springfield City Council, where the members' differences were in the spotlight, Springfield City Council spent Friday, September 4th working to understand each other better.
oh boy.
Can we just scream we're careening into the world of left-wing cities here?
Yes.
Come together and understand each. Do you
We're
think
going to
that
support each other.
Yes, we are. And to chart a more tangible path towards the goals laid out in the Forward SGF Comprehensive Plan. At a retreat meeting that lasted most of the day, Council was guided through discussions and exercises by EverStrike Solutions, a public sector consultant that specializes in strategic planning and coaching based out of Kansas City. Cora Scott, the city's chief spokesperson, confirmed that the contract with EverStrike is not to exceed nearly $14,000. Not bad for a day's work. I swear, consulting is an industry that opens itself up to some of the biggest scam artists that exist. Now, that doesn't mean everyone who is they've got a lot of fantastic consultants out there, but some of these people, it's just crap. And the amount that they charge, if I wouldn't feel guilty for ripping people off, I could think I could make a lot of money. I could do it legitimately, but you could do it just so you do all this feel good and let's all get along. And the more you charge, this is the way that the left perceives things oftentimes. The more you charge, the more of an expert you are in government, anyhow, the more legitimate you are. And so somebody comes along and it's like, hey, for a day, little session, $14,000. And oh, they must be really good. $14,000. Now, I know there's a lot of background work that goes into it and so forth that, quite frankly, is, I'm sure, a lot of copying and pasting. It's just repetitive stuff that is shared from, city to city or institution to institution. But I wanted to find the thing here where it mentioned, and forgive me, I don't have it highlighted. I pulled it up on my phone where they talked about the crime aspect of this.
Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, so here, I'm going to start reading. The city has already aggressively supported public safety initiatives and taken several steps to build up a police force that has been fully staffed for years. However, council members indicated that crime itself is not a large problem as much as the public perception that Springfield sees high rates of crime. So they're already in that mindset that you people are just a bunch of whiners. You blow things out of proportion. It's not that big. It's the same thing we hear from the mayor of Chicago. We hear from the mayor of all of these big cities that have these problems. And while Springfield isn't there yet, that's how you get there. You pretend as if it's not as big of a problem as it is. And it isn't. Here's the thing. To them, it isn't. Most of them live in neighborhoods where this is not a constant issue. Most of them do not own businesses in which they have to deal with this sort of thing constantly. They live in their little walled-up lives in which, to them, anytime the issue of crime comes up, they roll their eyes. It's not that big of a deal, just because it's in the news. That's what every left-wing city says. So the news leader piece reads, however, council members indicated that crime itself is not a large problem as much as the public perception that Springfield sees high rates of crime. To combat this, okay, so see, they have to combat your misunderstanding about crime in Springfield. Council members proposed having a police community liaison who can follow up on crimes residents observe and increasing collaboration with community partners and organizations to address societal issues like homelessness and drug addiction that can contribute to the perception of high crime. Look, and we were talking earlier about the stabbing in Charlotte, South Carolina, of that Ukrainian refugee who demonstrates suddenly it's the one Ukrainian that made left-wingers not care about Ukrainians any longer. But how they want to separate these things, and they want you to believe that there's no real connection between drug addiction and and crime, that there's no real connection between homelessness and crime. And so they have to educate us so that we understand that when you see that, that's not crime, that everything's fine. Everything is perfectly okay. If anyone is under the delusion that there is any desire to start rolling back what we are dealing with in Springfield in terms of crime, you have to understand they don't think there is a problem. They believe the only problem is you think that there is a crime issue in the city of Springfield. And that's part of what they discussed with this consulting firm that came in for under $14,000 is how is it that we can re-educate the people. You see, what is and isn't a problem is a matter of opinion. And they just don't think there is one. And some of that is the lifestyles that they do live. You know, they don't have a small business in a strip mall with a back alley that's filled with needles. They don't, have a business downtown in which, either you or your neighbors, it's very common to have somebody smash through the window, steal something. That's not the life they live. And so much like what we see in Washington, D.C., or what we see in Chicago or Charlotte or these other areas, that the people who are in charge do not live in the same or areas of the city. They don't have businesses in the same, they live in their own little different world. And so they genuinely believe it's not that big of a problem because all that they know of crime isn't personal, generally speaking. And it's not something they see on a daily basis. It's what they hear people complain about. And so it's just a bunch of whiny citizens that don't really understand. It is not going to get better. I can tell you that. It's going to get worse because that's what happens when you have a city run by people who don't think it's that big of a deal. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor, the absolute premier provider of hardscaping, landscaping. If you want it done, it's going to outlast your business, your home. These are the folks to do it. Not just the art of it. They are just incredible and incredibly ethical as well. A lot of times if you have big projects done in your home, and they leave, and afterwards you're like, well, this and that, and I guess this is what you come to expect today. This is sort of a throwback, I find, with Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor to the way that it was once upon a time where, you knew you hired someone to do a job, and they were going to make sure that they exceeded your expectations, didn't simply do the minimum that was expected. And that's what you get with these folks. In the designing, in the product quality itself, and the work that they do. And of course, you can see the projects or the outdoor living space that they created for me on my Facebook page, which is Nick Reed. There's a couple of three different videos there showing that process in different capacities. But I also recommend that you go to their site and read reviews from other people right here in the area who have had work done. It's not just residential also. Or maybe you have a multi-living facility. I know there are constantly, we see a lot of these apartments that are being built up, particularly those that want to be a little bit nicer than the standard. I would start as part of that building project, keeping in the loop Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor, have them create the outdoor living space to add to the living experience at your facility. HunterHardscapes.com. You can also find them under Nick's endorsements at KSGF.com. The individual who is responsible for the massive disinformation campaign of hands up, don't shoot is dead. Now, Dorian Johnson, a name that most people don't know, was the buddy of Michael Brown, who attempted to murder that police officer, who, of course, then in turn used lethal force in order to save his own life. That really led to massive amounts of riots. This is the whole Ferguson thing. And Dorian Johnson falsely claimed that Michael Brown was trying to surrender. He said, "My hands are up, don't shoot." And that the police officer decided, why not? And opened fire on him, killing him anyway. That's what was used as the rallying cry. And you still see it sometimes today. Hands up, don't shoot. Not long after that event took place and that there was the beginning of this he tried to surrender stuff, there was audio, and I played it at the time of this was on the scene raw. No preconceived notions, no rumors going around. Michael Brown was still in the street, dead. And you could hear people in the neighborhood telling each other what happened. And in the conversation, there was no, he tried to surrender. There was no, he had his hands up and said, "Don't shoot." In fact, it was quite the contrary. And many of the people who lived in the area, and these were people of color, were talking about how he rushed the police officer. Incidentally, the Obama Justice Department under Eric Holder also found that the hands up, don't shoot claim was a complete and total hoax. They did this massive investigation. 3 separate autopsies, all of which confirmed that the wounds were consistent with him attacking the officer. Prosecutor Robert McCullough later explained that many of the witnesses weren't telling the truth, confirming what was evident to anyone who cared about the facts over feelings, and that many of them admitted that that they had just flat out lied. Many of them acknowledged that they had been pressured to falsely claim that he had tried to surrender. And the sick thing about it, and this is just the reality. Despite the fact that all of the witnesses who watched it play out, there in the moment, while relaying what they had just seen to other people on the scene, they all had a consistent story that he attacked the police officer. There was no attempt to surrender. Despite the fact that the witnesses who claimed that they heard hands up, don't shoot, admitted to investigators that they lied, and these were investigators from the Obama administration on a federal level, and that despite what I think it's fair to say was a sympathetic perspective towards Michael Brown, the Eric Holder, or the Obama administration under the direction of Eric Holder, still had to acknowledge that this was a completely 100% justified shooting. Yet that has never stopped the left from utilizing the term hands up, don't shoot as justification for protesting, as justification for rioting. It was a total and complete lie. You look at how many of the banner events that occur in this country that are utilized by the left to justify persecution of political opposition and sometimes even violence, how many of them are built on a lie, be it hands up, don't shoot, the very fine people hoax, the claim that there were police officers killed on January 6th inside the Capitol, lie after lie after lie after lie. And here in a city of violence, Dorian Johnson, the individual responsible for the hands up, don't shoot hoax, murdered not far from where the hoax all began. Glenn Beck is coming up next. I'll talk with you tomorrow. I'm Nick Reed.